You're in for a supernatural adventure with the Word of God as Oyix Alfred shares transformational truths in this message.
In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so this evening I'll be sharing some facts behind the prophecy, basically, and some of the things like Jeff has mentioned that are happening. I've put together a slide just to run us through what is available in the public domain. I've also avoided mentioning some private companies, but I'll just talk us through some initiatives that are going on there. Like we've been taught, we know that these things ultimately will lead to the beast system, and the man of lawlessness would need systems to run. And we also know that principalities are responsible for influencing systems. One of the things that will become, I'm hoping that you will take away, is that you would see that it's just like fitting together a puzzle. So many parts of it might be coming together at different ends. But when we look at it holistically, we'll see a picture. Moses, could you present the slide now? So I've tagged it. Okay, let's give him a minute to put it up. The path to global unity and the progress we've made so far, and some of the progress that we're expecting, the initiatives that are coming online in 2026. So there are, if we think about it, if somebody is going to have the power to influence the whole world, there are 5 pillars of unification that needs to come together for the person to be able to wield influence. And there is the security. The first pillar is security. The second one is the global economy. So they need economic power to be able to do it. Second one is military might. They need military might to be able to do it. And then influencing trade, which is where currency comes in. They need to have world influence in the currency that people use to exchange value. And then the final pillar is religion. So I will just step away so that we can have visibility. Can you go to the second slide now? Okay. So these are the 5 areas. So the presentation is going to walk us through, in each of these pillars, what the progress that the world has made towards it, the initiatives that are ongoing, and then finally in 2026, some of the initiatives that are expected to come online. Okay. Let's go to the security pillar. Go to the next slide now. So there is something called Interpol. Everybody knows Interpol already. Interpol helps the world coordinate the security strategy. One thing that you would note is that all of the initiatives, when you look at them at the microcosm level, they make sense, they have value, So what Interpol is launching now, they've brought it online this year actually, is a more real-time unified security system where all member countries, they're calling it the ICOR system, 24/7 monitoring system, digitally enabled, where they will be able to share intelligence, unify all the biometric databases, facial recognition, real-time case information, everything across all the member countries. So it's the security forces or the personnel have what they need to be able to track down criminals, right? Now, this system in itself, like I said, is very useful because it makes law enforcement faster. But then it means that at the global scale, if you wanted to find somebody or hunt them down or whatever, and you have access to a system like this, it makes it easy. The second pillar for security harmonization is from the UN. They had a convention, a cybercrime convention, because, another thing to note is that crisis always provides the enabling environment to be able to launch new initiatives. So whenever there is like a lot of crisis or war going on, because if things are fine, nobody is going to try to change things. So because of the cyber security that has been going on for so long, so they came together to create a legal framework. And the legal framework is important because these are independent nations that have their own legal system. So in order for them to be able to collaborate, there needs to be a legal framework that governs them. And that legal framework has been created. And it's expected to begin enforcement in 2026. What that means is that the laws across all the member countries will be harmonized in the way that crimes are treated, in the way that in enabling this Interpol to be able to have jurisdiction to do what they need to do. And we've started seeing some of those we've started seeing some of those things come online in Nigeria, for example. Interpol's operation in West Africa has increased, has record highs. There's a lot of repatriation that they've been doing in Ghana, in Nigeria, West Africa. Okay. Okay, I'll just stand here. So go to the next slide now. So that's on security. One more initiative, I guess the biggest one is China. So China has an initiative called the Global Security Initiative that they...
Exactly. I thought I should explain so that you follow through what he says. So these are the systems. I think it's already explained too. That, for instance, they can track everybody in the whole world. So those are the things he's explaining. What are the facts behind the prophet? Ezekiel has said one thing has happened. So what are the facts? How do we know in reality that okay, this is coming? Do you understand? Is it clear? Okay, so we can follow through. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So riding on top of that same Interpol system, China is also now championing, essentially helping the rest of the countries improve their security. They have something called China's Global Security Initiative, where member countries will leverage this Interpol. So they are merging the Interpol with the rest of unconnected countries, and essentially help them build up their military base or whatever. But the goal is that, you don't need to now build out your own security infrastructure or framework. We will be able to give you a template to ride on. We'll be able to support you strategically. So this is just for security. We're going to still come to the military one. So the next one is the economic. Can you go to the next slide? The economic integrations that are happening. So economic integration is accelerating from all the UN nations coming together. Okay, go to the next slide now. They are coming together to harmonize the way that, especially on the tax front, for example. Now, this one is already live, and this is one of the things that Nigeria is implementing. So the UN nations have harmonized the minimum tax rates that they should be charging. Why is this important? Because taxes are how governments are funded. Because this initiative, for example, the BEAST system is going to run on money. So if there is no framework that can guarantee that there will be money coming out of that system, if there's no legal backing, then they can't really do much. And so the 98% of global GDP has been covered by this, which now guarantees that you can project how much all these top economies are going to be putting in the government coffers. And remember that preceding this is the security initiative, which will be funded by these same member nations. And therefore, nobody can say that they don't have the money to be able to contribute to financing the security initiative. So we also have go to the next slide now. We have other harmonizations that are happening, which is, with this tax thing, one major thing that is not front and center in the news is the e-invoicing standards that have been adopted across the world. And this e-invoicing standard, the one Nigeria is implementing, is a global standard that this comes with. It means that every transaction that is happening is being reported to the authorities, and they have visibility into. So in other words, it becomes easier to ban trade of whatever sort. It becomes easier to influence, whatever kind of economic incentive or activity, or deter, for example, trading with certain kinds of people. When you think about this and you bring the security initiative alongside, in other words, if you how do they say it now? If you blacklist someone, for example, on the security, portal, the person, it becomes easy for them not to trade, because you can also blacklist their e-invoicing at this e-invoicing level. Do you understand? And so the other component of this is, okay, let's go to the military coordination. So the military one is that why you need military power is that some people will be defiant to security protocols. And so how do you muscle them down? So what we're seeing is NATO, which used to be a security initiative that was set up during the World War II to combat, Russia and to combat Germany and Japan, right? That event has happened, but NATO is still growing. They're still adding coalition members to their team. Then EU set up a new defense union. And this defense union is they've actually become operational this year. The goal is that because of the crisis that has happened in Ukraine and the inability for EU to coordinate a unified strategic defense, right? So they've said, you know what, let's set up a unified rapid deployment force of 5,000 troops. And if you Google online, you'll see that this has become operational, I think, in the last month or so. And so this gives the EU's defense the legal power to be able to intervene in security matters of member nations. This is coupled with the NATO integration as well. And the US peacekeeping reform also is tending in that direction. US up until now, UN up until now, they hardly intervene in a offensive manner, right? It's really just been, so they are making some reforms to also increase their ability to rapidly intervene in crisis. So go to the next slide now. This is for military coordination. So there's harmonization of military powers. There's ECOMOG also that already exists. There is the African Union initiative that is going on. I think we'll talk more about African Union when we get to further down. Okay, so for currencies, currency is so important because if the world, if you're going to run a global economic system, you actually need a new kind of currency. You can't print enough dollar that would make every current country be sufficient in their currency. So what is happening is that central banks are now exploring what they call central bank digital coins. This is riding on the technology that has already preceded this, which is crypto. We'll get there. And so what this means is that about 137 countries are exploring this cryptocurrency-based economy. Nigeria already has one that has gone live. So 137 countries, that's about 98% of global GDP. And why this is important is that, okay, so 3 nations have already launched theirs. The Bahamas has a central bank backed digital currency. Jamaica has, Nigeria has as well. And so 49 other countries are piloting it right now, including China. And the ECNY, the yen, already has done over 1 trillion. And the Eurozone as well is developing the digital equivalent of crypto. Right now, it seems that they are all disconnected, but the next slide, go to the next slide, you'll see how everything is going to harmonize. Now, there's something called mBridge project that is backed by IMF and the World Bank. The mBridge initiative is that all these central bank-backed cryptocurrency will be able to talk to each other seamlessly. So they've already piloted it. An MVP was achieved last year. In 2025, they're expanding it with signing agreements with central banks. And the goal is that by next year, they will roll it out. Now, the idea is that it becomes easy for trade, right? So right now, the settlement system for trade is a bit slow. SWIFT also, which powers most of this trade, has also begun to pilot their own cryptocurrency-backed initiative. Now, because IMF and co, they give a lot of loans to countries. So they are able to weaponize the facility that they give to get you to become a participating nation. So the moment all these cryptocurrencies are already talking to each other, it becomes easy to say, you know what, why don't we just harmonize this thing? It's already digital, it's traceable, it's backed by blockchain, which makes it transparent. And then we already are talking, why don't we harmonize it and make it one currency? So it becomes actually feasible. And so because it's also crypto, there's no cost of production in the sense of thinking about the logistics of deploying physical dollar, right? The world is already, most transactions happen electronically. So all that is remaining is just to find a framework that would harmonize this. And so you can see that the conflict against the dollar, that most people are becoming agitated at the macroscopic level now against dollar, is also breeding new ideas. People are becoming open to other initiatives, which is also plays into this strategy. Because if everything was fine, if nobody had any problem with settling with dollar, nobody would be open to other kinds of ideas. Can you go to the next slide? So at the regional level, we are seeing that harmonization happen. So Euro has already expanded access for the Euro to additional 20 countries that use Euro now. ECOWAS also has piloted most people may not know, but there's a unified currency for ECOWAS called the ECO that is expected to come online in 2027. And every member state would be using that currency. I don't know how they will do it, but we are here. So The plan is for it to come online in 2027, and then there is BRICS as well. So BRICS is essentially an agitation against the dollar. And these are countries that have economic prowess. They are open to alternatives already, and they wield influence economically. All right, go to the next slide now. So we have the other pillar, it's interfaith, right? So interfaith is how would that one happen? Harmonizing all religions. So it turns out that, go to the next slide, there are a lot of NGOs that have been championing this cause for the longest time. There's something called the UN Interfaith Harmony Week. There's already a known thing that they celebrated every February since 2010. There is this other one that was new to me, a United Religions Initiative. Their goal is just to find a common ground amongst all religion, and they're already spreading their initiative across 100 countries. And this one, they are aligning with the UN. But the most influential one is this one coming from Abu Dhabi, because they have the finance to back it. So Abrahamic Family House is, I guess they are harmonizing based on the common denominator, Abraham, between most religions. And then there is I think Human Fraternity document. This one there was even Pope Francis in it there. And so you see that they are trying to get a lot of influential, either countries that have major religious influence or figures that have major religious influence to build a harmonized framework. And so if you go to the next slide now, you'll see there are some common themes across all these domains. We have there's a multilateral governance one, all the major unions, the UN, these are the common denominators across all of this stuff. The UN is involved, the G20, the IMF, international organizations that typically provide neutral platforms. They are beginning to wield their influence in this harmonization. Now, the digital transformation that is happening across all the different spheres are powering this. So we have digital identity. There's a private company, I didn't put here, that is also being run by one of the most influential tech entrepreneurs in AI. What the company, you can look it up, it's called WorldCoin. What they are doing basically is they have an iris base. They're giving everybody in the world unique identities, and they're starting with poor countries. So right now, they they claim they have over how many million users in Nigeria. So it's not so far-fetched. So what happens is that when they onboard you, they will give you free tokens, crypto that you can spend. So they snap your eye and they give you an ID. They have this orb, that's what it's called. It's called WorldCoin. So digital identity frameworks that would power this, because they need to be able to verify your identity in real time so that they will be able to, if I can verify someone's identity, then it becomes easy to restrict access or verify access, right? Then blockchain, the technology blockchain is powering all of this, because there's no way that countries are going to work together if they feel like someone owns the data. So blockchain provides an incentive that all of us own the data, is mathematically verified, so we can all warehouse a copy of the ledger, therefore we can work together. So without this technology, it will not even be possible, especially the mBridge initiative, the cryptocurrencies. And so then the unified legal frameworks that are being built is going to bypass the typical country by country, legal systems that pose a stumbling block for all of this, right? So we're seeing, yes, public-private collaboration is happening a lot. So for example, there's this individual, Bill Gates, one of the things that his foundation sponsors is they do a lot of lobbying in countries to be able to pass relevant laws to support initiatives that, when you look at those initiatives, it makes it, for example, GMO food in Nigeria is being sponsored by that organization for the most part. The lobbying, I think I heard that even the tax system was partly written by a company that they sponsored. So we have private individuals that are taking stakes at this. We also have private, like the digital identity, for example. We have private companies that are, like I've mentioned, that are building all of these initiatives and partnering with government stakeholders to do it. We've talked about the legal harmonization that is happening. Then emerging technology, AI as well. So AI and quantum tech is the two important ones. Why is one? I don't know if you've heard anything about quantum computing that is trending online. Why is it important? Because when you're dealing with 8 billion people scale, you need the fastest computing possible to be able to make things snappy. And so there's a lot of pilots that is happening with quantum initiatives. Some countries, I think China, which we'll see, has begun to pilot it to use it for ID verification. So if you couple quantum computer with the digital identity framework and AI's ability to make decisions, you see that it becomes easy to run an 8 billion world in real time. And then of course the blockchain, it also makes the blockchain transactions fast, because today one can argue that, okay, it's not as fast as it should be when you're using it to transact. So you need faster computing. Go to the next slide. So that's the technologies that are coming online. So Interpol is already using all of this for this I-Core that I mentioned. They're leveraging all of these technologies to build it. So it's no far-fetched. That's what's backing it. And of course, they're using blockchain so that member countries feel at ease as well concerning it. Can you scroll up now? Let's look at that quantum technology. China launched a quantum satellite, which they are going to also use to interconnect all their surveillance programs in China. And then there is now Asia-Europe interconnection based on this quantum computing as well that is happening across. Just the nutshell is that it's actually happening, it's not theory. And they're beginning to interconnect different hubs to pilot it at certain scales. If you go to the next slide now. So the domain, the way to think about this is, as you're seeing advancement in each industry, especially technology industry, you want to also think about the things that it's enabling. So this is just a matrix that explains it. So for example, all these systems need to be online, right? So how do you cover the world with internet? That's where things like Starlink come in. So you can see that the rapid evolution of services like that, even though the principals that own it may not necessarily know what they are doing, but we understand that these things are being run by principalities, right? And they're executing a strategy. So if the whole world is not covered with internet, it becomes difficult to empower people to transact with this new system that you build. Hence, anybody in the world right now can have access to internet. And if you know anything about technology, it starts expensive, it ends up being dead cheap. And so you see how, for example, satellites are required for the security coordination. It's super easy to launch satellites these days. The e-commerce everywhere, GPS system, the financial system, quantum computing is making all of this fast. The biometric system that we already have, ranging from the new format for e-passports, which is already being rolled out. And then when you tie this to the new digital ID systems that are being rolled out, it becomes easy to paint the picture. So in terms of the specific things that will come online in 2026, can you scroll up a bit? Let's see. So yeah, specifically this I-Core one is becoming full operational next year. That's the timeline. The UN, all those policies have already been signed this year. Like I mentioned, the Euro 5,000 troops has already been, the rapid deployment force has already happened this year. So it means that they will start using them next year. Then the cryptocurrency initiative across all central banks is ready. They will be expanding globally next year, which means that they'll start harmonizing at that level. So all the central banks will start communicating for trade's sake. Then the next major timeline that we have here is the ECOWAS eco-currency. Why the African one is important is that most African countries, their economies are usually influenced by the IMF and the World Bank. So if they're harmonizing this currency thing is not about currency, it's about harmonizing the economy to be able to measure all of their economic activity, easily. And then it makes it easy to say, okay, since this whole economy has already been harmonized, let's take this one and join to this other one. Because you can't wake up one day and try to join the 57 nations of the world or that, but you do it at the regional level, and then eventually it becomes easy to harmonize all of that. Okay, so scroll to the last slide. Yeah. So we see that, in the security domain, these are 190 nations. Their biometric database has already been harmonized, and Nigeria is one of them. And then the UN Cybersecurity Treaty has already been signed. In terms of economic domain, they have built systems that would make taxing easy. And then some of I don't know if you know this Africa Cross Trade, whatever, AFC, this is making it easy for Africa. The goal is that Africa is supposed to be able to trade amongst itself easily. As trade is facilitated easily, economic activities is growing, you can tax easily, tariff is easy, and then you can remit easily, so that there's money available. On the military domain, like we've said, the NATO is integrating all of its forces. EU has a new deployment force that they would use. And currency domain, current IMF and co, they're harmonizing it. And the religious domain, interfaith curriculums are being taught in schools now in the US and all that. They're beginning to sensitize people that faith is all about love. It's all about all of those nice virtues and all. So In 2026, we expect to see significant progress in all of these pillars based on the data available. If you scroll to the end, we have the sources. If you want, I can give you the research paper and the references. Thank you so much.
For more messages like this, log on to www.mspdevotion.org. You can also follow Oyeks Alfred on Instagram and Facebook, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, all with the handle Oyeks Alfred.